Great, thanks, Mark.
Yes.
All right, so hi everyone. It's really good to see you all around the whole table. Thanks for joining us for this panel today. We have 3 alumni of the MLC. Some of you, I know it's your first MLC event, so I'll just start by introducing the program a little bit. The MLC is a master's program here in the linguistics department that is professionally oriented. So in addition to the master's curriculum in sociolinguistics, we also have a lot of events just like this, professional development programming, including with our alumni, other speakers, and so on. And as the director of the program, I sort of try to highlight achievements of linguists working as anything other than faculty. So folks not like me. Because there's lots and lots and lots of different kinds of options for linguists. The trick is to find them and secure them. And that's what the MLC is kind of all about. So today we have 3 alumni with us who are going to share a little bit about their paths since graduation. And Holly, you graduated 5 years ago. Kathryn, 4? 3?
4. Yes.
4 years ago, and then Glenn, you graduated 2 years ago. So just to get a little bit of different kinds of perspectives about where we're at. So Mark and I are going to start us off. In a little bit, we'll have a break to re-up on some more dinner, because you will still be hungry. And then we're also going to leave plenty of time for just kind of open discussion. So whatever's on your mind, note it down or even raise your hands. We want this to be very interactive so that we'll all get the most out of it. So with that, I'm going to welcome our speakers. We have Glenn Abastillas, Holly Richardson, and Kathryn Ticknor. And I'm so happy to welcome you to Georgetown.
Thank you.
It's always such a treat. So if we could just ask you all to just briefly introduce yourself, let us know when you graduated, although I spoiled that just now. What is your background, and where have you been since graduation professionally?
Okay. You're all looking at me, so I'll start.
Yeah. Take it away, Liz.
So, it's weird because I keep forgetting when I did graduate, even though it's the most recent one. It's either last year, 2015.
2015.
Yeah. So that's when I graduated, and I had already landed a job at the Center for Applied Linguistics, which is a good place for linguists. When I was leaving grad school, and after that I transitioned into this role as a computational linguist with this company called 3M. You might know their products rather than the company themselves, because they make Post-its, they make everything. And after working with them for a year, this other connection, this job opportunity that I had already, initiated, I'd interviewed with them during my last year at the MLC, had reached back out to me, and that was to do cancer research at the NIH. And so after working as a computational linguist for a year with 3M, I moved on to do computational linguistics and also oncology research at the NIH. So that's where I'm at right now.
And then, hi, I'm Holly Richardson. So I graduated back in 2011. And I came into the MLC having had a couple of years of professional experience working in the nonprofit sector, which is where I still work now. So it's funny, I was remarking to Glenn that it feels like a lot of the other MLC folks that I know veer towards more private industry, and I'm the one who sort of waves our nonprofit flag that says, yay, the social sector. Lots of jobs there too. So I specifically work in nonprofit fundraising. I am a fundraising generalist, so I work on portfolios that range across corporate, foundation, individual, and special event fundraising revenues and strategies. I currently run the fundraising portfolio for a small community-based organization called the Catalogue for Philanthropy, which is a local giving guide to small grassroots organizations that are really doing the incredible transformative work amongst DC, Maryland, and Virginia communities, but are super small, and you've probably never heard of them, but they're really worth it. So we produce an annual catalog that says, hey DC region, if you really want to give your dollars wisely and know that they're going to go somewhere awesome, these are the folks where you want those dollars to go. So I'm currently working at this small organization. I've also worked at a medium-sized national organization called Reading Partners. I've had a tour at NPR doing institutional fundraising for them and serving as their grants and reports manager. So I'm sort of from large to very small nonprofits focusing on development, which is really sort of the intersection of all organizational operations of programs go through there, finance goes through there, management goes through there, strategic planning goes through there. So that's where I am now.
And hi everybody, my name is Kathryn Ticknor, and as we were introduced, I was lucky enough to come visit the MLC for a speaker series when I was a prospective student. And when I was here for my prospective visit, we had a speaker come from an organization called Catalogue, which ultimately is where I ended up working after graduation. I just was really motivated by the work that they did, which was in healthcare market research or research and insights. So I had, prior to that, kind of like Holly, spent some time after undergrad working mostly in international affairs. I had been working for a university at that time, and so I sort of thought I was going to continue on that path, and then coming to the MLC was sort of an about face for me, wanting to get more involved in healthcare. So since graduation, I mentioned I worked for Catalogue, which does, again, consumer insights, market research for the healthcare field. I've also worked at Buzell and Hamilton, nearby, also in the healthcare space, a little bit different take on research, design thinking, maybe some terms that start to cross your path as that becomes a more consumer-focused way of doing research. And then now about a month ago, have started at an organization called Inspire, which builds online communities for health and wellness. And we do research for them, clinical trial enrollment, and also some advertising as well. That's where I am.
Excellent. Yeah, should we go around the room so you can all, so we can all
Yeah, that'd be
introduce
nice.
ourselves?
Yeah.
That's great.
Definitely.
So let's
Yeah.
start with Mark.
So, in case you don't know me, I'm Mark. I'm the MLC program assistant this semester. I'm a second year PhD graduate student in sociolinguistics concentration. So even though I'm not quite on the same level of the MLC, I consider a lot of our similar overlapping sociolinguistic interests to be the same. So I'm really lucky to get a chance to see the professional side of linguistics in this position. So it's great.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a second year MLCer. I've been thinking a lot about what's going to happen in May, and I'm still really confused and don't really know. I have been saying that I'm like part a variationist, part a discourse analyst lately. I've been thinking about healthcare things. I think that the Veralogs and the Ogilvies of the world sound like really cool things to do. Dabbled in communications a little bit at the National Zoo, so I've kind of thought about a little bit of everything, but I'm still very confused and open to new ideas.
Hi, I'm Callie. I'm also a second year MLC student. Kind of in the same boat as Emily. Right now I have a job at Nielsen in their data science department, and I really do enjoy that. So I like the research aspect of being in a corporate market research firm. So, but I do a little bit of communications, which I also like. So yeah, those are my interests, I guess.
Hi, my name is Anne. I'm second year MLC as well. I'm interning right now with Ascension, which is the country's largest nonprofit healthcare system, as a market research person. So market research across both patient-facing and internal employee research as well. So I think probably that's where I'm gonna stay for the short term, but I don't know. We'll see. Come back.
Hi, one more MLC year, second year. My name is Pink, and what am I doing right now? I'm so clueless. I guess I'm just busy with schoolwork, doing a lot of projects in many different areas, like different linguistic subfields. And when it comes to like May, I'm thinking about going back to my old job, which is teaching language as whatever language as a second language. That's about me.
Great water bottle.
I think we all have some.
I brought a bottle.
Everyone has videos.
No, we can explain it.
So I'm gonna take this opportunity to plug the event where Ping got that water bottle from Glenn. For those of you who are not familiar, every April we have a larger career mixer with alumni and friends of the program who, may or may not be hiring, but are all really good contacts to have. So I'll be sending out announcements about that when it's getting closer to time. Sometimes companies send swag.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Great.
I'm Juliet. I'm an undergrad. I'm a junior linguistics major in education right now, so I'm trying to figure out what to do with that.
I'm Alita, also a junior undergraduate. I only just recently declared linguistics. I'm also a double major. And yeah, I'm just kind of trying to figure it out. Very excited about opportunity, but I just don't know what exactly I want to focus on.
Hi, I'm Jem. I'm a senior undergrad, linguistics major, art minor, and I also went to the Google Talk. I don't know when that was anymore.
Last week.
The days
For midterms,
blur.
yeah.
But I'm really interested in computational linguistics, but as an undergrad, I think I've taken the 2 classes I can take, and I'm not sure how to move forward with that if I need to go to grad school or continue with it. But generally just don't know what to do with my life.
Nobody really does.
That's okay.
You never actually figure it out. That's a big thing.
And that's okay. That's
No one
okay.
at this table is fine.
Yeah, no.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It all works out, but you never actually figure it out.
Yes, but we can chat a little bit about concrete next steps, thinking about graduate school, because you all have thought about graduate school, you all at one point thought about graduate school, and so we can, that's a question that we can raise a little bit later tonight for sure.
Hi, my name is Wenxing, or Sarah with an H. Right, so I've been here for actually a long time because I took a break because of my health, and I was actually in a class with Glenn 3 years ago, and I was in class with the MLCers like last year. So yeah, I'm actually gonna graduate this semester in December, and so I'm looking for jobs right now. And I'm also working on my thesis with Dr. Schilling, specifically on forensic linguistics with online threats. But my research interest, it will be intercultural communication. And so I've done a lot of jobs, and most of them are focused on teaching jobs. A Chinese or English lecturer. I used to be a Chinese lecturer in the Department of East Asian Department at Georgetown. It was a temporary job, and but I also did other jobs as like event coordinator or like foreign exchange analyst or like the U.S. study abroad consultant, like to help those Chinese students to apply for college and help them crafting their resumes. But I'm just not sure what I can do like in America because the job market they have like a lot of restrictions on the citizenship thing. So that's why I just hope to know what I want to do. Well, I'm looking as I was telling Dr. Sorry. Before that I'm actually looking for a job. Except if it's not about language teaching, it will be about like social media part.
This is also a networking opportunity. So for sure, if you hear a keyword that speaks to you, that's when you should talk to that person. Definitely. Okay, shall I get us started so we get to know a little bit more about you all?
Yeah.
So Mark and I have this kind of list of vague questions that we'd like to pick your brain about. Maybe we can start with, so maybe Kathryn, you can get us started since you very recently moved to a new organization.
I'd be happy to.
So walk us through like a little bit about how you found and then landed your current position. What's behind the success?
Networking, for sure. So I think the number one thing that I have learned is never close a door, ever. So I'm actually now at the job that I am at Inspire because of a former manager that I had at Verilog. So I think to your point, constantly just talking to people about what you're interested in doing is the key to that. I was at Verilog. I was very happy there. It's a great organization. I think no one ever gets sick of saying, "What do you do for a living?" I'm a linguist, and that's one really nice thing about Verilog is it really helps you sort of embrace that identity. I kind of cite that as being my first job out of grad school as helping me carry that my identity as a linguist for sort of the rest of my career. And so through various paths, we were talking about this earlier, Holly, you have your career that you want to do because you love what you're passionate about doing, but then you also have things like, well, I want to be close to my family, or this commute is terrible. So all of those things go into your job decisions, which is why I was eventually on the job hunt again. And so with Inspire, I had discovered about myself that two things that were really important to me in a job were, one, something related to healthcare. Whereas I had dabbled in international affairs in the past, or whereas when I was at Booz, I had been exposed to any number of different projects I really found most motivated when it was related to health. Second was doing something that was specifically related to research and language. Again, Booz Allen gave me great opportunities to expose myself to different elements of work, but if it was sort of further removed from that, I kind of started to lose interest. So I just tapped into my network. Honestly, when I realized it was time for a change for myself, called up former coworkers, said, do you have any ideas? Do you have any suggestions? Are you looking for anyone? And there they were. So now I'm with Inspire, which again is very similar. We call it market research, but as I'm sure you're learning, you can use linguistics very directly. I don't necessarily go to the table and say I'm doing conversation analysis or discourse analysis, but looking for those patterns, looking for those noisy silences, identifying data out of the really unstructured mass of natural language is a skill that I think is going to become more and more needed and in demand as we go forward. So that's my sort of long-winded answer to how I ended up back where I am.
Yeah, no, it's really, really great points.
If I can add to that, I think the two things that I would add to that is, I completely 100% agree around the power of networking, but I think networking also can feel really daunting of being like, oh, if I don't have the network that's connecting me to the things I want to do, then that's great for those people who do have the network, but where does that leave me? And the two thoughts that I would have about that is your network, and I've found this to be true throughout my career, is that your network actually extends longer and farther and deeper than you think it does, because people who, like you, are going to be interested to introduce you to folks that they then think that you should meet. So even if you feel like your network is really sort of a core cohort of sort of 5 folks, past teachers, past mentors, past coaches, past friends of your parents. Don't discount friends of your parents too, like they're folks, they have jobs. Tapping into those folks and so I think even if it's a small cohort, they have connections that will get you further than you think would. And I also think there's a lot of power in going to your network and saying, I don't really know what I want to do, but I'm in this space where I'm trying to figure it out. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm embracing that rumbling, I don't really know, but I want to figure it out. Because it makes people think, it just makes people throw opportunities at you. I'm going through something somewhat similar right now, is that my husband and I are preparing to have our second baby, and I'm going to be moving back from a full-time role probably to more sort of a consulting role. And I've gone to my network very loosely to say, I'm going to be stepping away from my current full-time position, but I'm looking for interesting things to work on. And people just start saying, have you thought about that? Do you know that these people are hiring? This is also a thing. So I would not underestimate the power of going to your network and just sort of saying, keep me in mind if you see anything that's interesting, but not necessarily because I need a specific job from you, just because you know that I'm out there and thinking and you think that I'm an interesting person. The other thing that I would add on to the networking comment is I also have had really tremendous success getting jobs just from cold applying. I don't think cold applying is dead. I don't think that networking is the only way you get jobs. I got my job at NPR cold applying, which was pretty good. And the reason that I credit that happening was because I was a really strong writer, and I took to the table my linguistic skills and my discourse analysis skills and broke down what are they looking for in this job description, how can I tailor the materials that I put in front of them so that they sound really bang on, that I was strategically repeating keywords and themes that they had in their job description. the narrative structure that I brought to my cover letter. Like a really well-written cover letter cannot be underestimated. So I think also thinking about your linguistic skills as anything that you encounter is a piece of text and is a piece of discourse, and you can, even on a very superficial level, apply what you know about sociolinguistics to those types of texts will get you far, and don't underestimate that. Like if something's interesting and it's out there, like put your name in. Like there's never any harm in applying. Particularly if you think, oh, I'm not qualified for that, like apply anyway.
One thing too.
I totally agree. Like you guys hit it right on the head. And I also agree that cold like applying is not dead. That's how I got my last two positions. I also agree, you hit on really big points. Like your linguistic skills aren't just to do professional work. You could use them to promote yourself. Like with a cover letter, you know, make use of your discourse analysis, or make use of like you know, what you study as far as like messaging and signaling, to craft your cover letter in a way that makes you look appealing to employers. And yeah, just apply, because you never know what will happen. But the network definitely is helpful. And I kind of just want to make a plug real quick for the Georgetown Alumni Meetup, which if you're in grad school, then you're automatically an alumni, I guess. But there have been people who are actually working professionally in the fields that some of you have already expressed interest in, like doing social media analysis, looking at threats, which is exactly what your thesis is on. She just graduated last spring, and I feel so bad for her.
Gabby?
Yes.
Gabby? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
She lends really cool.
She has a really cool job
Really?
now.
Yeah, doing, okay, so you guys are aware.
I just interviewed her for the newsletter, so there's really cool stuff coming.
Okay, there's another plug.
Another plug.
Yeah. But
This
also,
is networking in action.
this is networking action. And people come to this meetup just, you know, as professionals to just talk about their day, whatever. But everybody's always open to hearing like what the next opportunity is about, or where they can find another opportunity. Like, I think her name is Mina. I think through this meetup even, she was able to finally at least land an informational interview with this firm that does educational research abroad, which is something she was interested in. So just plug for that networking-wise if you want to look for a place to network and with other linguists. At least that's a place to go.
Yeah.
And I think you've all kind of touched a little bit about various skills that, you know, degrees in sociolinguistics or linguistics in general kind of bring, you can bring to the application process. But do you think you could maybe each kind of just briefly walk us through your day-to-day and kind of highlight what particular skills you guys are using from linguistics, and you know, or if you are using them, and if not, are there any other skills from the MLC that we might not think of as, you know, particularly linguistic, like organization, attention to research tasks and deadlines, that kind of stuff? We'd love to hear you just kind of touch a little bit about what you do day to day.
Sure. Okay, I can start. So my day-to-day deals with more technical aspects a lot. Like, you know, I'm a computational linguist, so I work with computers, with programming languages, with data. So that's one aspect, but that's a little more, you know, directly applicable, or you could easily see where that connection is. But another skill I think that you know, really helps make the workplace a good place is just more soft skills or intercommunication skills between your coworkers. Learning when, you know, have accommodation, for example, like speak to your audience in a language that they understand. So a lot of the researchers in my office are brilliant, but are really dumb when it comes to linguistics. Like they use linguistics as a cover term for everything that they don't understand when it comes to the projects that we work with. So they really don't understand. And you'll be lucky if you find somebody who knows the word syntax and knows what it means. But just speaking on, you know, the same level as the other person you're speaking with, communicating, making yourself be well understood, is just the skill, like soft skills, I guess. Yeah.
I was going to bring up a similar example that I think for inter-office politics, particularly I have a colleague with a super strong negative face, and my boss has a really strong positive face, and they butt heads a lot, and I have emerged into this role as like the colleague and the boss whisperer, where I know how to translate what Barbara wants to say to Emily and what Emily wants to say to Barbara, and how to spin that to accommodate whichever face is dominant for the respective person. And that is invaluable, because the amount of potential fights and just sticky situations and misunderstandings and inefficiencies that it creates when people just butt heads because Emily's got the super strong negative face and needs to be really super independent, and Barbara needs to feel like everybody's on her team and that everybody's her best friend. Being able to play that middleman and translate back and forth between the two of them, my entire staff thinks I'm like the Barbara whisperer now, and that I know how to do it. And it's just a function of saying I hear what you both are doing linguistically and communicatively.
And I think similar to that, sort of your entire ethnographic toolkit too, especially if you're starting. I feel like I'm mentioning Guzal a lot. You'd be able to read between the lines using your linguistic skills that this was a challenging role that I took on, and there's a lot of things that were new for me when I started this job. So something as simple as when you're on a conference call, active listening, taking field notes, right? I think those are skills that shouldn't be overlooked, and that people will then be wowed by the fact that you know how to do these things. But I think really taking time to observe in ways that you know how to do that not everyone is going to have developed those skills was really important to me. And I sort of would talk to people about here's what we mean by ethnography, here's what we mean by observation, here's how it can help our team when we are with a client, for example. Having one person whose role is designated active listener. And it sort of blew their mind a little bit, but I think for all of us it seems like, well, of course you're active listening, but don't be afraid to market yourself and the things that might seem obvious to you. Yeah.
So I have found it kind of, as I've entered a field that has a lot, that does not have a lot of linguists in it. I deal with a lot of survey methodologists.
Yeah.
I find it hard to kind of not get swept up in that and remember that, I can do discourse analysis, and I was or the fact that it takes more time, and trying to justify that to your bosses and your superiors and saying, I know that this takes a lot of time, but trust me, it's worth it. And I was wondering if you guys have any experience or any advice for navigating that.
So first of all, I hear you, sister, on that one. What I have found is that sometimes it's just an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
I have found that with methodologists, oftentimes they do respond well to say, here's a quick lit review or a quick list of abstracts. This is being used, right? People do this.
Yeah.
It's not just me that I made up.
Right.
Other times I have found, now this is depending on how much you're emotionally invested in it, sometimes I get emotionally invested, is make a case study, right? Take the data that I'm working with right now, which is patient caregiver, super messy natural language on these essentially message boards.
Mm-hmm.
And for my fellow survey, well, right, but we need to either just do a mention count of how many times this one word is coming up, or we need to send them a survey. Now, we know that we can do more than that with this naturally occurring language, but sometimes you just gotta make a case study and get it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could still have your boss say, what is this? But I found, I'm not gonna give you a percentage here, but a lot of the time, once they actually see it, it opens their eyes more than perhaps an explanation or a justification has.
Yeah.
So I try to have some little case studies in my back pocket and a lit review or two, very non-academic lit review or two in my back pocket, just ready to go when I need them.
Awesome, thank you.
It's hard, but don't give up.
I know, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, this really speaks to the interaction and sometimes the sort of differences that you have to accommodate for between the the sort of modes of thinking that we have in the educational space and then the application thereof. But it's good to hear that it's not impossible.
Could I change topics just a little bit and go back? So you mentioned face in the workplace, and you also mentioned not closing doors. Do you have any advice on saving face while walking out of doors and not closing them? Because I'm sort of trying to do that right now, and it's really weird for me.
So
Yeah.
saying thanks but no thanks.
Yeah, saying that was amazing, but I need to keep looking.
I have found, much to like the utter amazement and disbelief of my family and friends, is being really honest from the get-go about it and giving a very ample runway. Like in my experience, 2 weeks is not enough. If you really want to be able to save that relationship and have it continue to be a part of your network, giving as much runway as you can to say, I'm thinking about making a transition, let me talk to you through and why, where my thinking has evolved into on this, here's what I've gotten out of this position, and here's how it's changed what I'm thinking about and how I perceive myself and where I want to be. I have found the 2 times that I've made hard job transitions, the fact that I had that type of conversation and was really honest about it and gave a very long runway, so that it didn't feel so much like a surprise and they felt like they could plan for that transition a little bit more, made them happier and better. So.
Completely agree. I just gave a month's notice, which you don't always have the luxury of doing.
Right, yeah.
But it helped a lot. The other thing I'll say is I was very nervous about this last conversation that I had, and in the end, I don't think I needed to be, and I think the reason is that the whole time, I think if you are honest also about yourself the whole time, like when I started at Booz, I was very honest about sort of who I saw, what I saw myself, what I saw my role as, and then the whole time I was there, I tried very hard. And I think people see that, they appreciate effort, and then at the same time when I, sort of presented, this is the opportunity that I've been given, my boss was his reaction was, it sounds perfect for you. And I think if you've been sort of honest about what your goals are and, still giving your best, I think most of the time you're gonna find people that wish the best for you.
I also think there's the reality in the workplace of like, people leave.
Yeah.
That happens. Like, you're not the first to leave.
Yeah.
And, even I work in an organization right now where I'm one of 6 employees. So my leaving literally is a 6th of the workforce leaving. And I handle our fundraising, like I am the budget. And I gave a super long runway because I'm handling the search for my replacement. And while my boss was very disappointed, the compliment that she gave was, I'm disappointed to see you go, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And even though she would absolutely love if I would stay, people move on, that's no surprise about it. It's more so of have you been demonstrating that like I think the honesty point that Kathryn made is spot on, as well as, if you have the sense that it's not the right fit or that it's time to move on, your boss probably does too, or your colleagues do too. I mean, I think it's sort of more the exceptional situation where there's a total misread of you're ready to go out the door and your boss thinks everything's hunky-dory. If you've been a good employee and taking advantage of your check-in moments and asking for help when things are a stretch, or saying like, ugh, that just didn't go the way that I wanted, you should have good alignment on expectations going together.
And to your point, sometimes you just get better offer.
Sometimes you just get better offer. Sometimes they just pay better and you're like, there's more money.
And
Can you pay me more? Then yes.
They understand that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you get a better offer, they're not going to try to hold you back. Yeah.
It's actually very encouraging, right? Because we don't often consider the kind of a give and take relationship, especially if we're just starting out in our careers perhaps and are just very motivated to gain employment. Thinking about next steps then can be quite terrifying, right?
Or that you can ask for something.
Or that you can ask for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can totally ask for things.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Any follow-ups from this?
Yeah, I have another question. It's a little bit of a departure, so I don't mean to derail wherever you guys are going.
It's all good.
So we were just talking about stepping away. Do you guys have advice for onboarding? So I'm in the position right now where I've been involved with an organization for for 8 months as an intern, and we're approaching the time where like we need to start negotiating what an actual position is going to look like in terms of salary and title and everything that goes with like exactly what I'm going to be doing there. So do you have advice for? Have you been in a position where you've gone from an intern into a full-time position, or if you haven't, just general onboarding advice that you have for negotiation?
I can start this, I guess.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to me. The Center for Applied Linguistics, I had interned for about that long, about 8 months. And then the projects, that I was working on as an intern, they ended up being funded for a longer period of time, so they needed somebody longer time. And I guess one thing about working at the Center for Applied Linguistics is there are a lot of Georgetown people there. There's a lot. So that can help. So I don't know how useful this is going to be to you, but as far as onboarding, just speaking with my supervisor and being very clear with I'm interested in working here full time after this internship, and trying to craft that position with the supervisor. And then the supervisor, from that point, will speak with everybody else that they need to in order to make that happen. I'm not saying it's an automatic job, but at least that's a good place to start, speaking with your supervisor about it.
I would say I haven't been in the position of going from an internship. No. I'll say went into a contract position. That doesn't, not totally analogous. So I would say number one, do your research. Figure out what do you want your salary to be, and don't just assume that if it's a paid internship that it's your hourly rate times 40.
I hope not.
Right, so first of all, try and do your research as best you can and figure out what are other people at the organization at the level that you want to go into getting paid, and you can do some very tactful, quiet reconnaissance to that effect. Particularly if it's feeling quite solid that negotiation is going to happen. If you go to some trusted colleagues and say, can I get your advice on, I'm going into this negotiation and I'm just trying to information gather a little bit without getting too specific about numbers. Can you give me a sense of some salary ranges or bands or sort of other questions that you asked when you were negotiating or coming on board? So do some quiet, tactful reconnaissance with fellow colleagues about it. And I would say, in the successful negotiations that I have done, is I've had my sense of what's the maximum I'm going to ask for, and that's the first thing I'm asking for, but really what's my floor. And when I had a negotiation where we started at my maximum and then we very quickly got to my floor, and I said, well, that's my make or break. Like if that doesn't come through, I'm not coming on, and they moved back up. So I didn't get totally my ceiling or my max, but I got a nice halfway point. So being really clear to yourself about what your floor is, and saying DC is an expensive place to live. Don't undercut how much how much your life is gonna cost, and don't think that you're just gonna make it work. Yeah, good, cool. Get you're a well-qualified person coming out of Georgetown, which is an incredibly prestigious university with incredible skills. You've got value. So know what your floor is.
Yeah, so on top of that too, I've noticed that people a lot of the time give ranges. I wouldn't give a range, I would give your floor and make sure it's,
give a number.
Give a number, and make it where you'd be happy if you really did get that floor.
And think about benefits too.
Yeah, so factor that in.
Some benefits are negotiable and some are not, but.
And this is more of I agree with everything that was just said. More of a question, maybe in your interviewing or in your onboarding, is ask what's going to be the sort of review or performance evaluation process. Are you going to be given an annual raise no matter what? Because that might change your thinking. Versus, are you not going to even be looking at a raise until you get promoted? And are you up for promotion only on a merit basis? And there's only 4 people in the company, so who knows when that? All of these are important, I think, for expectation setting. And there's nice ways to phrase that in terms of your professional growth and aspirations, rather than just financially.
Sorry.
I was just going to add one other really quick thought to that. It's also perfectly okay to say, okay, we've landed on where we're going to be right now. Can we revisit this number in 6 months, just depending on how it goes, and set out that expectation early that this isn't an over conversation, and then you need to do the follow up to make sure that conversation then happens in 6 months. We either say yeah, we're spot on, or I'm going to ask for that little bit more than I wanted. But you can set up that early expectation of all right, we're settled here. Let's get me in, see how things are rolling, see how things go, and revisit.
And I know I don't have to tell you any of this to you guys, but get it in writing.
Yeah, have an offer letter.
And also, as far as scoping out what the salary is for, I'm not sure if you've already looked at it, but Glassdoor is a good place.
Yeah.
They often have salaries for many different positions across companies, so
Yeah.
you can even
Yeah.
compare how this company does against others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less sort of resource.
I think there's a really good app that's Glassdoor that you can compare the salary there.
That is it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you mentioned earlier, but you had a
Oh,
question.
no,
right?
Yeah.
it's fine.
Did it get answered?
Yeah.
Okay. You talked a little bit about keywords, kind of, in translating the don't just say I do discourse analysis, that kind of stuff. Could you each kind of speak a little bit about if you're going into a job interview, what are the really common kind of industry words that you use to refer to I'm a variationist, or I'm a discourse analysis? How would you say that to a prospective job, hirer that's going to hire you?
That's a great question, and I think that's so important and such a skill that you all can draw on is from not just industry to industry, but depending on if I'm talking to the development team versus my C-suite, what do they want to hear and what do they care about, and tailoring the message to that. It's funny because I have a very strong identity as a linguist, and I like to use those words whenever possible. However, in market research, we talk a lot about research. We talk a lot about analysis, insights, analytics. I then go to Booz Allen where we're doing government consulting, and those are all bad words because those are all associated with spending money and taking too much time. So now I have to scrape that out of my vocabulary, and now we're talking about design thinking and human-centric, human-facing end users, all of this, kind of new vocabulary that the government is trying to use. So that's been very interesting, and now I'm back happily in my market research world, but it's interesting because even for me, research was a word that took some time to get comfortable with because I didn't want to be in academia. And I still sort of had this vision of a researcher huddled in their little cubicle over a computer. It was actually Carolyn Reed, a former colleague of mine, very good friend, who was my mentor when I started in the MLC, who was you want to be a researcher? I was no, I don't want to be a researcher. I'm outgoing and I want to be an advocate and an activist. She was but you want to understand things and then tell the story, and you have to do research to do that. And so I think storytelling has been another way of kind of translating those things. So again, it's not even just industry to industry, but even who specifically I'm talking to, and that's where that ethnography comes in. What do they say? What do they write? And then tailor that back to them.
I definitely work in a field that doesn't have many, if any, other linguists in it. So I am definitely the rare parrot around that. So I don't, as opposed to Kathryn and Glenn, I really don't speak that much about my linguistics background because it doesn't have any currency in the field in which I work. What does have currency is the sort of more hand-wavy, fluffy, generic sort of strong communication skills. I'm an avid storyteller, mission-aligned, donor-centric thinking. So, nonprofits and fundraising, we have our own vocabulary set. But I would say certainly in my case, I actually don't rely very heavily on my linguistics identity because it has absolutely no currency. People would pat me on the back and be that's nice. Talk to me about corporate strategy. How do we go get, advisory board company to sponsor whatever.
And yet, it's your superpower.
Right. And yet it's my secret invisible cloak. They just can't see.
That's a good metaphor.
Mine's a little bit more boring because the terms that you would assume analysis, optimization, I guess, and parsing, all these linguistic terms do carry currency in my position. So these are buzzwords, but if you're looking for generic buzzwords that people will react to, not technical people, that everybody would recognize, that would be big data. That's a big buzzword that everybody loves to use and throw around. You have a story?
No, I want you to finish your.
Okay.
I do have.
The big data, that's not data extraction, unstructured data to structured data, that's another one. Creating structure from unstructured data. And yeah, that's what I would say. And I would say actually right now, since mine is more government facing and my prior job was private, one thing I noticed that they would use more in the computational linguistics field in the private industry is more efficiency, optimization, a lot of cost saving related terms like Kathryn mentioned.
I was going to say, if you write anything down, write down the phrase structured data from unstructured data.
Yes.
Because at least in the government world, data is something that they're very comfortable with. And I would say, this was when I was like practicing my little talk on the bus over here, if there's one thing that I think you learn, not to cut to this question, but from the MLC, it's to identify what is data and what counts as data. And I think this goes to your question, when you have someone who's saying, well, we only get data from giving a survey. Well, no, right? And I think being able to describe a conversation as data and then to be able to prove how that's data and then how you analyze it. I could say that I'm a linguist and I analyze conversation all day, but if I say I work with unstructured data, people are like, oh.
It's a good blanket term to use.
In this industry, at least
Yeah.
around here, it's been very helpful.
Yeah.
I noticed, I think it was Holly Lopez Long added unstructured data to her LinkedIn profile. I was like, genius.
That's great. Before we take a brief break, actually let's take a brief break right now so we can get something else to eat and drink, and we'll just be back in a few minutes. And I thought we might just open the floor since you all came with such excellent questions.
Sounds great. Yay.